investors come with a different perspective and a point of reference for how, for the home buying and selling process. I think most of you know that if you've ever gone through an international transaction, you know how challenging it can be whether you're over there or over here, whether they have, you know, identification, is it going to be a cash deal, yada, yada, yada. Some of the ideas and perceptions are based on traditions and practices of their country in terms of how they do business there. But what's really starting to dictate a lot of the transactions is the conditions of their home country. In other words, how strong is their economy? Do they have the resources available to invest here in the US? And vice versa. Is there monies available for foreign investors to invest? So those are some of the things that you think about, because it's not going to go away. Those are just influencers that are there. So let's talk about potential targets. Now what I did is I tried to find, I looked at Gary's numbers in terms of where these people originate from, what countries, what makes up that profile, that dynamic. Are they Mexican? Are they Central American? Are they from Brazil? Where are they from? And so what I did is try to handpick some of these things. And interesting enough, I found a report. It's called Top 10 Second Homes, or Top 10 Second Homes. That's put out. It was put out by, some of you may have seen this, the International Property Journal. Did any of you guys get that? But they identified 10 markets, and they did it based on relevant factors in terms of what they saw as relevant, and that is uniqueness, affordability, the opportunity for capital appreciation is a big piece of it, and then security, physically and financially. Because I mean, what's going on in Mexico scares a lot of investors, as we all know. You're not going to go there if you're worried about, you know, endangering your family or your life. But these are not in any particular order, but to kind of give you an idea, it starts with Mexico, the Riviera Nayarit, which you guys I'm sure are familiar with, and I'll talk about that here in a second. Natal, Brazil, Hermosa, Costa Rica, Placencia, Belize, Mallorca, Spain, Jolly Harbor, Antigua, Vancouver, Canada, I'm not even sure how to say that, Croatia. Okay, they're placing Croatia. San Diego, believe it or not, is a hot spot right now for investors because those condos have decreased in value 40, 50, 60%. And so you've got a lot of foreign investors looking at that market. And then Rodney Bay, St. Lucia. So what I try to do is find some of those that are closest to us, and that really, in terms of the population that we have here, how can that influence a purchase or a transaction in one of these countries? So we'll start obviously with Mexico, which makes up a big part of the Hispanic population in Texas. Mexico's been battered obviously by a lot of issues, starting with the H1N1 virus that just hung on forever. It just, and it kind of, people are still thinking about that, talking about it. It's kind of fallen off the radar a little bit. But if you talk to the Centers for Disease Control, they're expecting a resurgence of that in the spring. I'm not sure if you guys have heard that or not, so if you haven't got your shot, get it anyway. My wife works in healthcare, so that's why I know that stuff. The drug-related violence, that's really been unsettling for a lot of investors. They just totally backed out. It doesn't matter what part of Mexico it was, even though this may be along the border or something, they're seeing it as being all over Mexico. So investors have pulled out. And then just the political unrest. There's some things going on there, given the economy, that people start to react and respond. So all this coming on the heels of the woes of the U.S. economy. So what do they usually say, that if the U.S. sneezes, Mexico catches the cold, kind of thing, from a financial standpoint. And here's an example. In 2009, developers along the stretch known as Costa Vallarta, which most of you may know if you do a lot of business in Mexico, which includes Puerto Vallarta, Punta Mita, and the Riviera Nayarit that we talked about, they recorded sales of 315 units. That was down 54% from 2008. It was down 80% from 2007. And of the 112 developments surveyed, 43 reported no sales at all for 2009. Wow. And 18 of the projects just canceled and went off the market. They just walked away from it. Investors just literally walked away. So you can kind of see the impact of the economy, the economy's having in those regions where people either are trying to invest in or thought about investing in. Either the development's gone away or it's just not feasible at the time. Mexico's economy shrank by 6.8% in 2009. That's the worst showing in 30 years. When the devaluation of the peso happened 30 years ago, it really took a hit on the economy. Well, it's pretty much happened again. The decline is in full year gross domestic product, outpaced by 6.2% fall, registered during Mexico's currency and debt crisis in '95. So you can kind of see that they're not in a pretty situation right now. Although the Mexican Treasury just put out a report, and they said that in the fourth quarter of 2009 there was a 1.2% expansion. That's nothing. I mean, that's kind of that glimmer of hope, that light at the end of the tunnel. But you guys have seen that sign that says, Due to budgetary constraints, the light at the end of the tunnel has been shut off. You guys it's been shut off. This is just a little twinkle. I'm not sure if that's enough to bring it back, but their overall, the economic output was 3% lower in the same period in 2008, so it's really falling a lot. As long as they continue, their economy continues to improve, which I think, just really depending on how our economy goes, Mexico will kind of just sail along with that. Their problems regarding health, security, and drug violence doesn't worsen. The market will begin to mobilize. So if you've got investors, translation is Mexico is still, again, is becoming a buyer's market again. It really is. I mean, there's some great investments to be had, especially like that Junta piece I was telling you about earlier. It's really, some of the deals that can be had in these areas are pretty phenomenal. I mean, it's like a quarter of the value. So if you've got investors who have money, it's something for them to consider, and consider seriously. Any questions on Mexico? I'm going to move on.